cancer. Cancer affects everybody in this world and in America in some way. If we don't get it, we know someone that has. And I've got a special guest with me right now, Ken Churilla. Ken is a book author, and his new book is called No One Said It Would Be Easy, A Husband's Journey Through His Wife's Battle with Breast Cancer. Now, this is Ken's first book, but he's no novice. He's got 25 years invested as a music journalist. He's owned and edited his own country magazine. He's been a freelance writer for various artists in Nashville, including George Strait, Kenny Chesney, Martina McBride, and even rock and rollers Poison. You might remember them from the MTV days. And today he is my guest. I think the best way to start this off, Ken, is why don't you give us a little reading, and then we'll talk about the book.
Sure, absolutely. We'll start here. It's pretty early on in the book, but it talks about it's where he first learns and he's first getting acclimated with his new situation.
Okay.
I was feeling very overwhelmed, and to be honest, I didn't know how to fight the feeling. I sat there with my thoughts, and it came to me pretty quickly. I had two choices, fight or flight. I know that what you're thinking, and you're right, there is no choice. The only choice is to fight. I started thinking about a lot of things at this point that I never really considered. Of course, I thought about our family and the effects that our immediate future was going to have upon us. We had 3 kids at home to take care of, and how to explain that what was happening to their mom. I don't think I really digested it completely. I got enough to understand what we needed to do, but I still felt like this was something we could dig in against and win. You've seen those movies where 2 guys get into trouble in a bar and end up back to back with everyone circled around them wanting to beat them up. But somehow, in the end, they make it out of the bar safely. I know it's a crazy analogy, but that's kind of how I felt my wife and I were.
This book is inspired by a true story.
It is inspired by a true story. It's a guy that I know, and I was able to see pretty closely what he went through. But, you know, as a journalist and a songwriter and whatnot, you see things from different angles that most people tend to see them. And it was one of those things that I started thinking that so many guys go through this but have nowhere to turn. So I started looking around at bookstores and whatnot, and there's no books for the guys that are attached to this. You know, the wife is diagnosed with breast cancer, and she's in the fight, and absolutely, rightfully, all of the attention turns to her. If there are kids involved, a lot of attention paid to them. There's no attention paid to the guys. Mm-hmm. And the guys are thought, you're supposed to know what to do and how to keep the ship right and what decisions to make, but they're just as much at a loss as anyone else, and there was nothing for them. So I thought something like this would be a great way for guys to talk to somebody in a sense or hear from someone that's literally been in their shoes.
What was the process of this? From the start where you came up with this idea, talking with your friend, to actually seeing it roll off the press, so to speak?
The process was a long process. It was longer than almost anything I've ever done. It was 5 years it took. A lot of, us sitting down, talking, interviews, things of the sort. But, life gets in the way. You've got to do other things. This was a project for a long time.
Was it a hard sell to get a publisher, or was this something that was so unique because there were no books for men on this topic that they were jumping at it?
It really was. It was the latter. The second one that I talked to, we came to an agreement.
Okay. Now, what kind of feedback have you gotten now that it's been out a while?
The feedback has been really surprising, to be quite honest with you. Not so much. The guys, I've heard from a lot of guys that have read this, and it's kind of what I thought it was going to do. It helps them understand what's coming, what they might be in for. Some of the guys that have gone through it already, they kind of relate what they were doing or what they did to what Tommy does here in the book. Surprisingly, women. I've heard from a lot of women that have read this book, both survivors as well as just women that were looking for a book to read. And the response from them has been tremendous and extremely humbling. So many survivors that have read this that say they understand so much better now what their husband or their boyfriend was going through or what their kids were going through, because they weren't very much in tune with that at the time. They had more important things on their mind. They're literally fighting to stay alive. They kind of took a lot of things for granted through the husband, like a lot of people do. They just expect the guy to know what to do. And the thing is, he's really picked up and kind of put in the middle of a hurricane when this comes crashing down on his world. He's supposed to know every move to make, and he's just as lost as everybody else. And he's losing things too, depending on the severity of the diagnosis and everything. This is his wife. This is his best friend. This is the mother of his children, and he's losing that. Mm-hmm. On top of that, he's got to deal with keeping the house straight, keeping the kids in school and to their sports and whatever the case may be, taking her back and forth, helping her with her treatments, helping her cope. There's nothing for the guy. So the women that have read this, it's really been astounding. And like I said, from a lot of the survivors mainly.
Is there a part in here where it's an advisory, a console, if you will, for guys that maybe find themselves next week in this situation, says, what am I going to do? Let me go here and see what he suggests.
It's not a how-to book.
Okay.
The one thing about this, you'll see, the story is told through Tommy's eyes. So it's very conversational in that aspect. It's almost like watching a movie play out. He makes a lot of what most people would call wrong decisions. And that's the point of this book. He makes a lot of right decisions as well. But there is no wrong decision when you're in the middle of it. And there are some things that he definitely did wrong. But I've heard from a lot of people that, it's happened to me too. That's what we did. That's what I did. Mm-hmm. I have a guy locally here who his wife had just recently, right as he bought the book, was diagnosed. And we were talking, and there's a point in here where Tommy starts really getting into some escapism, going to the bar a lot more after everybody's in bed and everything else, but just to get out of this cloud of death that kind of hangs over his house, this black cloud. And this gentleman locally here was telling me that he found himself doing the same thing, not necessarily going to a bar. He's a gym health nut freak, and he found himself going to the gym a lot more than he normally would, just to get out of the house, just to get away from it all. And he said, I notice I see myself doing the same thing in a sense, and I'm making it more of a point now to not go, to stay home and be with her and just sit here and stare back at it as opposed to try to run away.
One thing that really caught my attention as soon as I opened the package when you sent me this book was the cover. It's a guy sitting on the end of a pier, and he's sitting there, but next to him there's nobody, but there is a shadow of someone, which suggests that this woman lost her battle.
It's hard. It really is. It's a tough thing. It's got nothing to do with her story. It's her thread, but it's him, and it's his viewpoint, his psychosis, his problems, his dealing with things. It's got nothing to do with the treatments that she might be going through, because they vary from person to person. This book is helping a lot of people, and that's the focus, is to really get this book in the hands of a lot of guys that really need it. The guys don't like to talk. They'll talk about the Blackhawks all day long, but they will not talk about something that's important, that's eating away at them. And that's what this book is for. And unfortunately, a lot of guys need a book like this.
Okay, you've got some great endorsements on the back here. You've got some doctors. The fact that it's about cancer, what was their response that you were writing a book like this?
It varies. The two doctors, obviously, that's their focus. That's what they do. That's their line of work. And so when they had read the manuscript before the book had ever gone to print, they were both shocked at the reality of it, the rawness of it, and the fact that how much it could help people. They said they would have recommended this to their clients for years and years had they had it available to them. Okay. The other guys, they've seen me write before. They know that when I write something, it's very genuine and very honest.
Okay. Well, how do we get this again, and where can we find you on the internet?
It's called No One Said It Would Be Easy, a husband's journey through his wife's battle with breast cancer. There's also a Facebook page. If you just go to Facebook, No One Said It Would Be Easy, however you want to do it.
Ken, you're a resident, native of Highland, Indiana. You're one of our own. And class of, 1990?
Class of 90, yes.
All right. You're getting older.
It's getting older.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me on.